Well, at times this chamber is marked by a spirit of hard work, cordiality, and bipartisanship, but unfortunately this is not one of those times. Since President Trump's inauguration, our Democratic colleagues have been needlessly obstructing the confirmation of extremely qualified nominees. And lately their focus has been on nominees for our nation's federal courts. But certainly their obstruction has been across the spectrum of nominees, slowing down nominees and forcing us to burn time confirming nominees which they, by and large, will vote in favor of. And for what purpose, other than to make it harder for the president, once elected, to get his team on the field and to serve the interests of the American people and the president's administration. But lately, as I pointed out, their focus has been on the federal courts. The Majority Leader has filed on 4 nominations last Thursday, and we hope our Democratic colleagues will think better of dragging out the clock on what's already a certain outcome, which is confirmation of these 4 nominees. If they do, no one will be surprised. This year, the Democrats have thrown up every obstacle they can, requiring procedural votes, needless debates, and a lot of time burned here on the Senate clock with no one on the floor talking about anything one way or the other. It's what we call quorum calls here. When America tunes into what's happening on the Senate floor, there's nothing happening other than the clerk calling the roll from time to time. And that's time we could be using for bipartisan legislation. But the goal here is for our friends across the aisle to cause us to burn the time, keep us from doing the people's work, and obstructing the president's nominees to the federal bench and beyond. The irony here is that our Democratic colleagues have even obstructed judges originally nominated by President Obama. So they are not particularly picky in terms of the judges and the nominees they will obstruct. But all they've really accomplished so far is wasting the Senate's time and trying the patience of the American people, who know that there's more productive work to be done than simply having endless quorum calls and silence on the Senate floor while we burn the time on the clock in order to get these nominees confirmed. Our colleagues know their tactics won't actually stop a nomination, but they insist on engaging in them anyway, to everyone's detriment, including the American people's. This year, they forced needless cloture votes on 7 of 8 district and circuit court nominees, more than any early presidency. And they've demanded that full 30 hours of floor time per nominee that Senate rules allow for currently. These are partisan roadblocks that never change the outcome. They're just dilly-dallying. They're intended to grind this body's normal procedures to a snail's pace so that nothing much else gets done. And oh, by the way, then complaining that not enough is being done. That's the tactic, that's the game plan. By way of comparison, during the first year of President Obama's presidency, only once did Senate Republicans require a cloture vote on one of the president's nominees. In the Trump administration, Senate Democrats have forced cloture votes on all of the president's nominees except one. This is all a game to waste time, and maybe a little bit for show. But these tactics, as I said, don't change the outcome, which is confirmation, and ironically, because of an even more cynical ploy adopted by Democrats under President Obama. The Senate used to require 60 votes for confirmation of judges, and this permitted the minority to block judges who were truly out of the mainstream or who did not enjoy the support of their home state senators. Senator Harry Reid, when he was Majority Leader just a few years ago, changed all that, but it seems like it backfired on him. He tore up the rule book when he invoked the so-called nuclear option in November of 2013 and changed the Senate rules to jam through 3 nominees to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, eliminating the so-called filibuster because Democrats were upset that the D.C. Circuit was blocking regulatory overreach by the Obama administration. Now the filibuster's gone, and I hope that going forward, our Democratic colleagues will recall their previous actions as our caucus proceeds with filling these vacancies. It's good that these outcomes are not in doubt because these positions are too crucial to be left empty any longer, even if it means we stay in session over the weekend or at night. On appellate nominations, we're going to move forward with 4, whether the Democrats cooperate or not, because these are nominees of highly qualified, well-respected jurists and academics. They are Notre Dame law professor Amy Barrett, nominated for the 7th Circuit; Michigan Supreme Court Justice Joan Larson, nominated for the 6th Circuit; Colorado Supreme Court Justice Allison Ide, nominated to the 10th Circuit. That's the seat vacated by Judge Neil Gorsuch, elevated now to the Supreme Court of the United States; and University of Pennsylvania law professor Stephanos Bibas, nominated for the 3rd Circuit. I look forward in talking in more detail about the high intellectual caliber and remarkable qualifications of these 4 nominees in the coming days. This is going to occupy the rest of this week. And it's worth noting at the outset that the 4 include 3 of the most accomplished female lawyers in the United States. For now, the important thing to note is our determination to get this done. Under Republican leadership, we're working to deliver to the American people, and confirming judicial nominations is just one example. Today, the Senate is scheduled to confirm Trevor McFadden to the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. Mr. McFadden was voted out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, on which I served, unanimously in July. He's Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice, graduated from the University of Virginia Law School, and has extensive experience in law enforcement. This is somebody voted unanimously out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, yet Senate Democrats are denying him a voice vote or other expedited process, and again, forcing us to burn the clock just in order to get his nomination voted on. Last week, though, we confirmed Scott Polk of the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Oklahoma, despite the same sort of games. Mr. Polk was originally nominated to the same seat by President Obama in 2015. So you would have thought that our Democratic colleagues would relent and ditch their procedural gimmicks. But no, they didn't, even for a judge originally nominated by President Obama. Fortunately, it didn't matter because Mr. Polk ultimately was confirmed by a substantial margin of 79-16. So why the delay? Why the obstruction? Why the foot dragging? If 79 senators on a bipartisan basis are going to confirm the nomination. I, for one, would like to commend the President on his sterling picks, not only for the recent district and circuit court nominees, but also of a judge I mentioned a little bit earlier, now Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch. To date, 4 of President Trump's appellate nominees have already been confirmed, 2 for the 6th Circuit, 1 for the 11th, and 1 for the 8th, respectively. This is an excellent addition to our nation's federal judiciary. All of them, I believe, will faithfully interpret the Constitution and know their job is to say what the law is, not what they believe that it ought to be. Mr. President, the Majority Leader has been unyielding in his goal of moving forward a productive schedule for the good of the country here in the Senate and moving as swiftly as our rules allow. So, stall tactics for stall tactics purposes alone will not work. They will not prevent us from moving forward with these nominees and confirming them before the week's end. You can count on that.